Good morning. We'll go ahead and call the Board of Supervisors meeting for February 3rd to order. We begin this morning with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Supervisor Montgomery. If you please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now the clerk of the board will read our meeting procedures.
Welcome to the Placer County Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, February 23rd, 2015. Agendas are available on the wall outside this meeting room. If you are here to speak on an issue not appearing on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment period. There's a 3-minute time limit per speaker. The board is not permitted to take action on items addressed under public comment. When you speak, clearly state your name and address for the record. All items on the agenda will be open for the public to address before final action is taken. There's a 3-minute time limit per speaker, which will be monitored by a timer on the podium. If there is a person speaking on behalf of a group with no other testimony from another member of the group, please identify yourself as such, and your time may be extended at the pleasure of the board. Keep in mind that the chairman has discretion of limiting the total discussion time on any item. If you are hearing impaired, we have listening devices available. It is requested that all cell phones be turned off or put in the silent mode. Thank you for your participation and cooperation.
Thank you very much, Ann. We'll move on our agenda to our consent agenda. Is there anything on consent that any member of the board wish to have removed for consideration? Seeing none, any member of the public identify any item on our consent calendar that you'd like to have removed for discussion? All right, I'll entertain a motion on consent.
Second.
The motion Holmes, second Wygant. We have a roll call, please.
Wygant?
Yes.
Holmes?
Yes.
Montgomery?
Yes.
Euler?
Aye. Thank you very much. Brings us to our public comment period. This is a time when any member of the public can address the board on any item that is not on our agenda, understanding that the board cannot take action on items raised under public comment. As you step forward, please identify yourself and try to keep your comments to the allotted 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Pete DiGiordano. I live at 755 Level Lane, and I'm here about the rezoning of my property that you guys did last month. I went to Sheridan and got petitions. Every person that I talked to, there were some people that weren't home. I went to all the houses except for, I don't know, maybe 10, 15, because I got sick. But everybody that I talked to thought that you guys were wrong in what you did. They said they do want business out there. They do want growth. A lot of people talked about a rodeo grounds that was supposed to be put out there that was turned down. Anyway, I got the petition here if you guys would like to look at it. I could have it brought up.
Actually, you just deliver it to the clerk of the board, if you would, please. She'll stamp it and accept it into the record.
100%. Okay. All of them saying that you were wrong. They're saying private property rights are private property rights, not for you to change and do whatever you want with them. Also here, I've got a copy of a video that shows that the information that you got was a lie. It's right here twice. He lied to you. He lied at the Planning Commission meeting. It's on tape. So I'd like for you guys to take a look at it again, and if you don't, then we're going to take it wherever we take it. Thank you so much.
If you'd submit that, if you're interested in leaving it.
No, the tape you guys have. You
Oh,
look
okay.
it up. I've got it here. It's for me. I'm going to bring it to Channel 3 and Channel 10 as soon as all of this gets done. Also, if there's any news media here, I'd like to speak to them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, anybody else want to address the board under public comment? Come on up, sir.
Good morning, Chairman Euler and members of the board. My name is Michael Woodbridge. I'm the Public Affairs Officer for the Tahoe National Forest. And I'm here today to share with you that the Tahoe National Forest will soon begin scoping on our planning process to improve management of over-snow vehicle use on the forest. We plan to publish a notice of intent in the Federal Register on or near February 20th. And the notice will describe our proposed action for designated National Forest System roads, trails, and areas on the forest where over-snow vehicle use will be allowed, restricted, or prohibited. The notice will also designate an over-snow vehicle trail system, including groomed trails. We're undertaking this process in part because of a new final rule for over-snow vehicles and because of a settlement agreement regarding grooming of over-snow vehicle trails. We anticipate that our proposed action will be similar to the forest's current management of over-snow vehicles, but with some minor changes to improve management. Your participation, as well as the participation of all members of the public who are interested in winter recreation on the Tahoe National Forest, is essential to making this planning process a success and helping us to create the best management plan possible. The Tahoe National Forest is planning to host 5 public meetings on this project after the notice of intent is published. While dates have not yet been confirmed, we plan to host meetings in Nevada City, Forest Hill, Truckee, Sierraville, and Sierra City. There will be a 30-day public comment period beginning when the notice is published. After this initial scoping period, a draft environmental impact statement will be written, and another public comment period will take place at that time. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions I can.
Good. Thank you very much. Any board members have any questions or comments? I don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else under public comment wish to address the board at this time? And seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on with a supervisor committee reports. Any member of the board have anything they wish to bring up at this time for the good of the order? Supervisor Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to inform the board that I attended the first organizational meeting of the Placer County Fairgrounds Revitalization Committee. I was impressed by the quality of people that make up that committee. I want to thank Mark Rideout from Facility Services for putting that together. They appointed Bill Hart from, I think he's from Roseville.
No, he's from Alta.
From Alta, that's even better. As the chair. And
A little
Lisa,
different than
Yeah, a
Roseville.
little.
Yeah, wait.
Slightly.
and then Lisa Worthington from the city of Auburn, who I believe works for Caltrans in their landscape department, is the vice chair. So anyhow, I'm looking forward to good things from that Placer County Fairgrounds Revitalization Committee. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Okay, anybody else? All right, seeing none, we can go ahead with our 9:10 timed item. This is the presentation of a proclamation designating February as a Grand Jury Awareness Month. I believe Al Winton is here. Mr. Winton here? And Mr. Winton, if you had anybody else that you wanted to bring up with you, feel free to do so at this time as I read this proclamation and present it to you. So, a few years back, Governor Schwarzenegger, 2009, Governor Schwarzenegger declared February to be Grand Jury Awareness Month. And so we have assembled the proclamation that reads in part thusly, whereas every year in California, each of California's 58 counties, 19 ordinary citizens take an oath to voluntarily serve a term of 1 year as grand jurors. Grand juries have been in existence since the adoption of California's original constitution in 1849. Grand juries are impaneled to act as, quote-unquote, arm of the court, to be the voice of the people and the conscience of the community. And grand juries conduct their investigations under the auspices of the Superior Court of California, have broad access to public officials. Having been in front of a couple grand juries, I can attest to that. Employees, records, and information. One of the most important functions of grand jury is to review the operations of the officers, departments, and agencies of local government. Grand juries are charged with investigating and reporting on local government operations to assure that their responsibilities are being fulfilled legally, efficiently, honestly, and in the best interest of the public. Grand juries serve as a watchdog authority and are well suited to the effective investigation of local governments because they are independent bodies, operationally separate from the entities and officials they investigate. Grand juries' fact-finding efforts result in reports that contain specific recommendations aimed at identifying problems and offering ways to improve government operations and enhance responsiveness. The hard work done by grand juries has a great effect on our communities and makes California a better place to live. The reward of being a grand juror is the satisfaction received from working with fellow residents and community members to improve local government for all. And of course, as I mentioned, in 2009, Arnold Schwarzenegger declared February to be Grand Jury Awareness Month. Therefore, it is appropriate for us to recognize the efforts of those jurors, both past and present, who have volunteered their time to serve on the Placer County Grand Jury. Therefore, we now proclaim that the Placer County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims the month of February 2015 as Placer County Grand Jury Awareness Month. I'll present this to you, and then you can say a couple words about the work of the grand jury and everything that you folks have done. Thank you very much. Thank you. If you have any words for us, feel free.
Chairman Mueller, Vice Chairman Wygant, members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Al Witten, and I'm the president of the Placer County Grand Jurors Association, known as the PCGJA. We are an educational outreach organization composed of past grand jurors, present grand jurors, and concerned citizens. Some of our volunteers are here today in the back rows from both our group, the Placer County Grand Jurors Association, and from the sitting grand jury. On behalf of all of our volunteers and on behalf of the 19 fellow citizens that are serving on the sitting grand jury, I express my gratitude and thank you for this proclamation proclaiming and designating that February 2015 is Grand Jury Awareness Month. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your service. You know, in the vein of the grand jury and the whole purpose of shining a light on government operations, one thing I neglected to mention at the start of our board meeting is I want to thank Ann, your office, and our staff. Our staff has worked very hard to do what they can to get information out to the public sooner rather than later, thereby giving the public greater opportunity to review items that are going to be before our board. And so as of now, board agenda packets are available to board members and available online to the public the Wednesday prior to our board meeting. We only have a legal requirement, I believe, to have this stuff out 72 hours in advance. We don't have a legal requirement to have it out 72 hours in advance, but we're now 6 days in advance of the board meeting. Staff has worked to get all of the information together that the board, and so now the public has a chance to see everything the board sees 6 full days in advance of the board meeting. So kind of in the vein of the grand jury and its purpose, just want to let the public know that staff continues to work very hard to make sure the public has all the information available as we try to make our decisions here as a Board of Supervisors. So thank you again to the grand jury, and thank you to our staff for working to make all that happen. We will continue with with our timed items. We have a 9:15 item. This is a presentation of our commemorative coins. And Supervisor Montgomery, you have the opportunity to make a presentation today. 2 presentations, I believe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman Euler. I appreciate this. I'm going to start with a young man, Mason Partek. Mason, would you come forward, please? Because we like to make you stand up and, you know, very, very clearly be identified as the recipient of this. And Mason showed me up. Many of you know that I'm all about the hats. He showed up in a hat today, and I didn't, so I'm feeling not quite up to this task, but welcome, Mason. For those of you who do not know Mason and are not familiar with him, he is a 5th grader, but he is certainly not a typical 5th grader. He is an accomplished chef. He makes celebrity appearances at many events. He teaches other children to cook, and he competes very strongly against adults at cooking demonstrations and recipe contests. I've seen Mason at the Gold Country Fairgrounds on a couple of events presenting cooking shows. He's very, very composed, very self-assured, and he does an absolutely fabulous job. But today's commemorative coin is about more than the fact that he's a wonderful chef and a great public figure. Mason took on a really impressive task. He decided that he wanted to improve the kitchen at his school, Alta Vista, here in Auburn. And he did that for a number of reasons, but the really important thing is he raised over $25,000 to retrofit the kitchen, bring it into the modern age, and create a facility for kids like himself who want to learn to cook and who want to learn culinary skills. So when Mason started this crusade, Alta Vista School's kitchen, and I use the word kitchen loosely, did not have a stove, an oven, and it had a dishwasher that didn't work. So to use the word kitchen was a little bit loose, I think. He decided that the school needed a fully functional kitchen. And so the students, families, individuals like me, I contributed to his cause because I just thought this was a wonderful opportunity, raised over $25,000. The kitchen will be able to install a fully functioning food science lab where students will learn to cook with a culinary curriculum created by the school district and local chefs from the area. At the end of each school year, the school will hold a special luncheon with food prepared by the students. And Mason has had this passion for cooking in the culinary world for quite a long time. I understand that you actually started cooking when you were still a toddler and could not yet reach the stove, so I'm assuming your mom and your other family members had some help for you there. But he is also a competitor in adult cooking contests. He usually places in the top 3 against full-grown adult chefs. Last Thursday night, in fact, his chili recipe took top prize at his school's first chili cook-off, and there were 16 entries, so he was number 1 out of 16. And he has this great series of videos on YouTube that I would encourage you, I think if you just Google his name, it will come up. They will come up. He also has a favorite presentation called "What the Heck Is This Thing For?" And it's a series that introduces kids to kitchen tools and how to use them, because oftentimes there's a lot of specialized tools in our kitchens that as a child or even as an adult you just look at and say, what the heck is this thing for? And Mason is our go-to on that. So his I'm not sure this is a long-term goal. I think this is a short-term goal. He would like to become the first kid to cook on the Food Network, and I believe you want to have your own show, not just a guest appearance. Okay, just wanted to check on that. So, Mason is someone who saw a need at his school and in his community and worked really diligently to fill that need. And, to me, this is a future hero, a future leader in our community, because he's already demonstrating those qualities right now. So this coin from all of us here at Placer County is for Mason Partak for his incredible feat of raising over $25,000 for the school and sharing the wonderful opportunity to be involved in the culinary world with his schoolmates. Here's to you, Mason. And would you say a few words for us? Thank you.
I would just like to thank everybody in this room, because I could not do any of this without all of the community. So I would like to thank everybody that helped out with the kitchen project, everybody that came to the Mandarin Festival to buy our jams and jellies that we fundraised. So I would just like to thank everybody, the Board of Supervisors, and the community. So thank you all.
I'm Mason's mom. My other name doesn't really matter, because when I walk through town, people go, "Aren't you Mason's mom?" I wasn't really prepared to speak today, except to say this kitchen project was really about the kitchen for Mason, but for me it was about empowering all of our kids and showing them that if they set their mind to something or want to make a difference, and they just step up and say, "Hey, I think we can do this," that as parents, let's get behind him and say yes, even when it's not easy, even when you know the work ahead of you is going to be daunting. And there were times that I wanted to quit, that he said, we can't quit. We're almost there. We only need $24,000 more. So, I mean, if it had been a soccer field, if it had been a music program, it happened to be a kitchen. And it was really about empowering our young people. And I just want to thank our community because you guys did that.
All right, Supervisor Montgomery, you have another one?
I do. Mason, you've left your hat on the,
All right.
you don't want to lose that. Okay, right now I'd like to ask Jerry Woods to come forward, please. And Jerry, I think you may have had someone else that you wanted to bring forward as well? Excellent, thank you. So this next coin is being presented posthumously. We tried for about a year and a half to get Wally Rimlin here in front of the board to have accommodation, and unfortunately his health and other issues just did not allow that. So today I am presenting to Wally Rimlin posthumously. Jerry Woods is going to be accepting it on his behalf, one of our coins here from Placer County. And I want to read a little bit about Wally because he was so much more complex and interesting individual than any of us really recognized. I was very fortunate that, strangely, he and I really hit it off, and we had a number of just wonderful, great conversations. Didn't always agree on everything, but you don't have to agree with everybody all the time. But Wally was born July 2nd, 1918 in Cincinnati, Ohio. He moved to San Diego at age 9 with his mother and his brother because he had lung issues, and his doctor said, you need to get out to that dry California air. And they actually moved first to Palm Springs, as I believe, and then to San Diego. Wally discovered a love for design and construction, and by age 13 had designed his first home. Age 13, a lot like Mason.
For his parents.
For his parents, yes. He, at age 19, Wally earned his pilot's license. He told his mother, who did not know he was taking lessons, that she should go outside in her backyard and look for a plane that was going to fly over the house. And when he got home that evening, he let her know that he was actually the pilot of that plane. And she was apparently not most pleased, but came to embrace his flying. He earned his high school diploma in San Diego and then had the very good sense to move to Northern California. He moved to the Bay Area, where he earned his college degree in architecture at UC Berkeley. And while he was working in Oregon, he saw a shed with a very steep pitched roof and realized that the snow was designed to fall off the roofs in Oregon, and he thought, what a great idea for a home design. So he designed, engineered, and got approval to build homes which we now know as A-frame homes. They were pretty much unheard of at the time, and Wally built, I believe, 7 of them in a very steep canyon in the Berkeley Hills. And a number of them are still here today. They survived the Berkeley-Oakland fire, so you can actually go out and see some of Wally's original A-frames. At age 30, he met his future bride, his best friend, traveling companion, and soulmate, his lovely wife, Marion. They did everything together. They traveled, they explored incredible destinations, and they were inseparable until she passed away about 20 years ago. Wally and Marion, in their travels, discovered Meta Vista and Lake Combi, and they came and visited almost every weekend. They purchased a piece of property, and they would come every weekend to plot on how to build their permanent home, the home that Wally said, this is where I'm going to build a home, and this is where I'm going to die. This is the perfect spot for me. This is where I've always wanted to be. He did design it. He did build it. It was right by Lake Combi, far ahead of its design companions of the day. Earthquake safety, incredibly energy efficient for the design of the day. Wally was committed, as many people know, to increasing water access for the residents of the foothills particularly, who may be on very small systems or may be on wells. He was really passionate about public water systems and making those available to people. He was also, this is so funny to say, passionate about wastewater. And not just wastewater specifically, but septic disposal. Wally, one of the first meetings I had with him, he gave me a very long far too detailed description of a septic dumping system that he came up with. But that was just the kind of gentleman that Wally was. He saw a problem and he worked to try to figure out how to make it better. He, as many people know, has never been afraid to stand up and to face criticism. He worked with the Placer County League of Taxpayers for many, many years, but interestingly, he was not anti-tax. What he really was very focused on was making sure that governments were transparent and taxes and fees when implemented were appropriate and served the purpose for which they were intended. And in fact, he worked diligently with Placer Hills Fire to get an increase in their fire tax because he recognized that it was necessary if the folks in Placer Hills wanted the level of service that they felt that they wanted. He contributed to a college back east called Hillside College, and he and his wife created the Wallace and Marion Rumlin Chair in Free Market Economics. And he did that in order to try to broaden young folks' understanding of the economics of our country. Now, you may not agree with his view on economics. We're all allowed to differ. But he was really passionate about protecting the county, protecting your taxpayer dollars, my taxpayer dollars, because we're all taxpayers in this room. And for that, I really honor him. On a personal note, he was lovely, he was charming, he was funny, he told great stories, and I will miss him very much. So I want to thank the both of you for coming out today. Jerry, I'm going to bring this down to the two of you, and then I'm going to ask you to make some comments, if you would.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get a picture. We've got to turn around here and do the official thing.
Thank you. Wally was really a gentleman. He was really something. There won't be another Wallace Rumlin. He loved this community, and funny thing about Wally, he never expected or asked for anything in return for anything he did. It was a very interesting personality thing about Wally. He was just truly humble and really believed in our community and making things better for all of us. And so I brought Dan Sokol up with me because Dan knows a lot about what Wally did during his time here.
I really knew him best in only one of his many accomplishments, and that is his work with the League of Placer County Taxpayers. I think it's somewhat appropriate that the two items before this announcement was made that the agenda would be available to everyone 6 days before the meeting. Wally would have stood up and applauded that item so much because, as you all know, just the weekend was inadequate for people to see what was coming up at the meeting. In all of Wally's accomplishments, I think the thing that drove him to the stature he attained was his bulldog qualities. Maybe that's a little rough to describe it, but after his memorial service, I found that was what really defines Wally. He would not let anything stand in his way. He would fight to the last minute and beyond for anything he believed in. As Supervisor Montgomery said, not all of us would agree with everything he did. I agree with most of them. Some of the members here would agree with fewer, but we have to admire his persistence and qualities of a bulldog in getting or trying to attain what he believed.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen, for your comments. Thank you, Jennifer, for your presentations. We'll go ahead and move on to our 9:30 timed item. These are our employee service awards. This morning, we have the pleasure of presenting 35 employees with service awards collectively representing 945 years of service to the county, and Robert's only been here for half of that. And what's really interesting in terms of the longevity of our employees is we used to do all of the employee recognitions right here, and we used to start back at year 10 or year 15. Well, we have so many employees who have been so dedicated to the county for so many years that David and I last week actually had to go up to Cedra, to the where the Planning Commission meets, and make the presentation to all of the employees that had been here for 20 years, and there had to be 30, 40 of those. So all the 20-year employees we're now having to recognize separately because we can't fit everybody into one room when it comes time for this. So we have 35 separate recognitions going from 25 years up to 35 years. And with that, Lori, any additional comments before we come down and get going on this?
Just a few, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I'm Lori Walsh. I serve as the county's personnel director, and I too was going to note the number of folks that we honored, their families and friends, co-workers, in a separate ceremony at Cedra's Planning Commission hearing room, where we were acknowledging their 20 years of service. But today we're going to honor folks that have served 25 plus years. And as each recipient is called, we'll have a PowerPoint presentation I would draw your attention to and acknowledge it really is the 2014 Service Awards. But as we look at the folks on the PowerPoint presentation, let me note that we did ask folks to send in a picture from now and then so that we could see the span of time that has occurred. And a few brave souls did just that. I think you'll enjoy the presentation. And speaking of photos, we will ask the full group to join us outside of the domes here at the end of our ceremony and our presentation so that we can have a group photo taken. But as you think about the employees we're going to honor today, you think about 25 and 30 and 35 years of service. I would challenge you to think about where you were those years ago and what you might have been doing then. And let me see, to help gain some perspective, maybe some of these benchmark occasions will help. John Lennon was assassinated. Prince Charles and Lady Di were married. Cabbage Patch Kids were introduced. The Hands Across America event was held. AIDS was first discovered, and the fall of the Berlin Wall occurred. It's really those ensuing years that our folks that we honor today dedicated their time in those years to their public sector careers. So it really is my privilege and my pleasure to introduce this item to you. This morning we will ask Board Chair and our CEO to come down and make the presentation of the awards. What we'll do is introduce the awards in a particular order. We will honor our department head first, who will have served 30 years. And then we'll move to the 25-year service awards, the 30 and the 35. We'll ask you to hold applause until each of the groups are fully awarded. And with that, I think if you'd like to use a microphone, I don't know if it's necessary.
I think David should use the microphone just because then everything
Just
gets
for posterity.
well, yeah, then it all gets on the record.
Good. This is working?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see so many in the chambers this morning. We start, as Lori said, by recognizing one of our department heads who has reached a particular milestone. This honoree in this presentation is a bit bittersweet because Mary has recently informed us of her intention to retire, of all things. So we are pleased that she's with us today. And our first honoree is Mary Dietrich, our Director of Facility Services, recognized for 30 years of service to Placer County. We'll take a quick picture.
Group photo after, right?
Thank you. Congratulations, Barry. All right, on to our 25 years of service. We're doing this by departments this year, a little bit different. So we're going to start with Administrative Services, and our first honoree is Kimber Goodman. Is Kimber here this morning?
Longevity in the family, thank you.
Moving on to our Community Development Resource Agency, our first honoree this morning is Kathleen Wisted. Is Kathleen with us? Couldn't make it. Our next honoree is Michael Henderson. Come on up, Michael. Clerk will meet you halfway. On to our County Clerk Recorder's Office. Our first honoree is Gerald Lefebvre. Congratulations. Our next honoree is Susan Taylor. Not here. Next is Gary Verissimo. Congratulations. All right, we're on to Public Works. Our first is Jess Alves. Next, we have Eric Comstock. Is Eric with us? I don't see him. Okay. Facility Services is next up. Rob Unholz. Next, also from Facility Services, Andy Fisher. Next, we have Christopher Holmes. Next, Daniel Montgomery. Followed by Bill Zimmerman. Let's see. Okay, now we're on to Health and Human Services. William Foster. Next, we have William Kirschman. Accepted by... Next from our library, Christy Lindquist. From personnel, we have Janine Steinheimer. Also known as on to the Sheriff's Office. First up is John Borden. Oh. Got it? All right. Next we have Richard Padilla. Nope. Okay. Next, followed by Brian Wiggum. There you go. Followed by Shirley Cox. Congratulations. Next, we have Stephen Morrill. Stephen? Okay, we'll get that to him another time. Teresa Suggett. Okay. Takes us into the Treasurer Tax Collector's Office. Cindy Badru.
Nice photo, Cindy.
Uh-oh. Trying to get away. All right. Congratulations. 25.
Okay, now we're on to 30 years of service. Hard to imagine. First up from Administrative Services is April Pay. April's followed by Linda Carlisle. Linda here this morning? No. Next honoree is from Cedra, Kitty Thompson. Nope. Okay. Next, Department of Public Works. I saw this guy, Bob Costa.
I guess they're doing individuals on the 30. That's 25, not good enough. That would hit 30 before we'll send a digital photo on you. That's great. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. On to Health and Human Services, Cecilia Van Vliet. Richard Connect accepting. All right. From the library, Karen Barton. Accepting on her behalf. Finally, our last 30-year honoree from the Sheriff's Office, Philip Dyke.
Got a couple of them. Who gets to go first?
All right. Congratulations to those 30-year honorees. Now, 35 years of service. Truly an incredible milestone. First, with the Department of Public Works, Carrie Cooey. Accepting Peter Kratz. Thanks, Peter, for being here. Next, from Facility Services, William Dudek. Accepting Mary Beaches. Thanks, Mary. And our final honoree today, 35 years of service, also with the Department of Public Works, David Mackenstead.
For what it's worth, I have to say 35 years ago I was about to start high school.
He was just getting out. All right, that concludes our service awards for this year. Thank you all so much for being here. We very much appreciate it. And group photo right outside the domes.
They'll find their way. We got plenty of time. We don't have much of our department head items anyway. All right, we're going to go ahead and continue our board meeting with our department head items. Our first item is administrative services procurement.
Chairman Euler, Supervisor?
Yes, good morning.
Thank you very much. Brett Wood with the Purchasing Division. With me is Mr. Bob Bigney, also with the Procurement Division. We're here today for you with an item for plan check and field inspection services. It has 4 action items. One of them is to approve a qualified list extension for the plan check and field inspection services as a result of an RFQ number 10069 from December 13th of 2014 through February 29th of 2016. We also have a request to approve blanket purchase orders with 3 different firms. They are Intertech Consulting Group of Elk Grove, CSG Consultants of Sacramento, and Wilden Engineering of Sacramento. With this, we'd like to amend for the record the fact that the board item says $1,050,000, and what we're really requesting is blanket purchase orders in the amount of $400,000 in total.
Okay.
So we'd like to amend the staff report and the action item in that amount.
Okay.
We're also requesting authority for the purchasing manager to transfer funds between the blanket purchase orders and authority to sign those documents.
Okay.
Mr. Bigney will give some brief background on these services and the need for them, and then we're happy to stand for any questions you may have.
So just quickly for clarification, the only amendment that you're making to what was reported in the staff report is a reduction in the aggregate amount requested of $1,050,000 down to $400,000. Is that a $400,000 even, or?
$400,000 even, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chairman Euler and board of members of the board. On December 13, 2011, your board approved the award of a competitive request for qualifications resulting in a qualified list for plan check services, field inspection services, and California Building Code consultation services. This list was effective for the period of December 13, 2011 through December 12, 2014. On August 1, 2012, at the request of the Building Services Division, Procurement Services issued blanket purchase orders to 3 firms on the approved list. This included CSG Consultants, Interwest Consulting Group, and Wilden Engineering. The Community Development Resource Agency has requested to renew the qualified list and the 3 blanket purchase orders for another year. All 3 consultants have agreed to renew the blanket purchase orders for the exact same rates. Procurement Services requests that your board approve a 1-year extension of the qualified list of firms for plan check services and field inspection services for the period of December 13, 2014 through February 29, 2016. and approve the renewal of blanket purchase orders with Interwest Consulting Group, CSG Consultants, and Wilden Engineering for plan check and field inspection services in the maximum aggregate amount of $400,000. And this is for the period of February 3, 2015 to February 29, 2016. And we're requesting that the board authorize the purchasing manager to transfer funds between blanket purchase orders as needed and authorize the purchasing manager to sign the resulting blanket purchase orders. There is no immediate fiscal impact resulting from the extension of the qualified list. The Building Services Division has budgeted for these services in the Building Division budget for fiscal year 2014 through 2015 through applicant-paid fees and will be included in the fiscal year 2015-2016 requested budget with no net county cost. Funds are not encumbered until services are rendered against the blanket purchase orders. I will be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions by board members? All right, seeing none from the board, any member of the public wish to address the board on this item? What's the pleasure of the board?
Second.
We have a motion, Holmes, second Montgomery, to approve the item as presented and amended to reduce the overall aggregate amount to $400,000. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll go ahead and move on with Children's System of Care, Families First, the slightly encumbered Richard Connect presenting.
Thank you, Chairman. A little close encounter with the bicycle. You familiar with this event? I had some secondary repair done. I'm feeling much better.
Good.
Good morning, board members, Chairman Euler, Richard Connect with the Children's System of Care. Each year, the Children's System of Care delivers, together with our key nonprofit partners, a host of mandated mental health services to some 700 children and youth in Placer. Today, for your review, we bring two related contract amendments to continue this commitment. Item 1 provides additional capacity to serve a growing need for therapeutic behavioral services. This is a state-mandated short-term intensive approach which puts a skilled interventionist in the home of identified family and youth to help stabilize interactions and teach much-needed skills. This service helps avoid costly forms of care like residential and group home placement. The $144,000 increase in state dollars will assure the county and our EMQ contractual partner have capacity to meet a need which has grown in the last 2 years due in part to Medi-Cal criteria expansion. Item 2 is also a contract with EMQ newly awarded by your board last summer. Subsequent to that award, additional resources have become available which provide unique opportunities for Placer families. Using state-only dollars, we'll position immediate responders with mental health skills adjacent to our CPS investigations unit, where often young people with emerging mental health challenges are first identified. Rather than open a CPS case to access care, we'll then be able to provide immediate assessment and treatment. Many of these families will get this immediate care rather than opening a CPS case, which is unfortunately sometimes necessary. A second pending funding opportunity in this amendment is available via partnership with our Sheriff's Department. Using grant dollars that we're waiting to hear word on, EMQ will provide mobile mental health crisis response to families identified by the Sheriff's Department, helping residents get timely care and putting law enforcement partners back online more quickly. These amendments will increase the combined contracts by $825,667 over the remaining 18 months of the contracts. The increase for this fiscal year of $355,667 is included in the department's current year budget. Approximately $1.5 million will be included in the department's pending 15-16 budget, currently in preparation. Neither of these amendments will require additional county dollars beyond your current commitments. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Board members have any questions? Seeing none, any member of the public? And what's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion Montgomery, second Wygant. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we at this time adjourn as Placer County Board of Supervisors and convene as the successor agency to the former Placer County Redevelopment Agency in order to take up the item considering the authorization of issuance of bonds. Janine Windishausen presenting. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. You have before you 2 items related to refinancing outstanding former redevelopment agency bonds. In 2006, 3 bonds were issued, one related to the North Lake Tahoe project area, one related to the Auburn redevelopment project area, and one which was countywide housing, which is required by prior RDA law, used 20% of the allocable tax amount from each of the project areas in addition to the Sunset Industrial Area project area. The outstanding amount totals approximately $21 million in bonds. It is proposed to take those 3 outstanding bonds and refinance them into 2 outstanding bonds, combining the project area and then the housing as a separate bond. The anticipated savings are almost 9.5%, given the current market, and that equates to about $130,000 a year in net present value savings for all the issues. It's just under $2 million. That savings will be shared by the other taxing entities, and the county's share is currently estimated to be about $30,000. Because of the dissolution of the redevelopment agency, the process involves a couple of steps that normally we would not have to go through. And so as the successor agency, you're being requested and then through the resolution approving a determination of significant savings, approving bond documents, directing staff to hire an underwriter, appointing a financing team of outside professionals, including a bond counsel, a municipal finance advisor, and a fiscal consultant related to the related tax calculations, and then authorizing certain county staff to take other necessary actions. And so the other primary action is to ask the oversight board to make similar findings regarding the savings, and then for the oversight board to request the Department of Finance to review and approve the refinancing. The Department of Finance will have 5 days after the oversight board's request, assuming they make that request, and that oversight board meeting is scheduled for February 25th, to acknowledge whether they will undertake a review. Then once they undertake the review, they have 60 days to come back to the county to give that approval or denial. We would anticipate approval. So what that means is that this financing process will continue on through the spring and into the summer, with us returning to the board one more time to present you with the preliminary official statement and get approval on the preliminary official statement. As I said before, the second action is related to approval of the financing team, again, bond counsel, municipal advisor, and fiscal agent, and then the underwriter will be selected through a competitive process. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Questions by board members? All right, seeing none, any member of the public wish to address the board on this item? Okay, the successor agency is being asked to adopt the resolution authorizing the issuance of refunding bonds to refund outstanding bonds of the successor agency, as well as approve the finance team, inclusive of Jones Hall as board disclosure counsel, Del Rio Advisors LLC as financial advisor, and Fraser and Associates as the fiscal consultant. Do we have a motion on both items?
So moved.
Motion Montgomery, second Wygant. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Josh, how long will your report take, do you believe?
Approximately 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. What we'll do at this time, having no other items before the board other than 2 timed items, we'll go ahead and adjourn to closed session for about 20 minutes. We'll come back and take the marketing report from our Ag Commissioner at 10:20, and then move on to our 10:30 timed item regarding the government center and the possibility of conditional use permit out there. So with that, County Council, take us into closed session.
The board will now adjourn to closed session as noted and take up 2 items of existing litigation, 1 item of anticipated litigation, and if time allows, adjourn as the Board of Supervisors and convene is the Placer County In-Home Supportive Services Public Authority for a conference with their labor negotiators.
Thank you. All right, we'll be back at 10:20. Okay, so we have completed a couple of our closed session items, so at this point we'll report out on those items, and then after the rest of our regular agenda, we'll go back into closed session to finish off the remaining items. Go ahead.
The board's returned from closed session where it took up its litigation items. In the conference with legal counsel on existing litigation, the two matters, Auburn Highway 49 Corridor Associations and the City of Auburn lawsuit, the board heard a report from counsel and gave direction to counsel. On the anticipated litigation, the board authorized the retention of Litwin and Associates to represent the county and the employee in an immigration matter at a maximum contract amount of $10,000. The board did not convene as the Placer County In-Home Supportive Services Public Authority, and that item will move to the end of the agenda.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll take up our 10:10 timed item. This is our 2014 Agricultural Marketing Program. I guess the highlights and accomplishments, a review of our 2014 program. And Josh Hunsinger is going to lead this conversation.
Good morning, Chairman Euler and Board. I'm pleased to bring before you just an update of 2014 highlights and accomplishments for our ag marketing program. Just as a quick reminder, beginning in March of 2012, the county entered into a contract with Merlot Marketing of Sacramento to perform PR and social media under the Placer Grown brand and promote Placer County agriculture to increase the sales, the profitability of agriculture in the county. With me today, the person that will be giving you the presentation is Debbie Hammond. She's the CEO of Merlot Marketing and someone I work very closely with on a regular basis to bring this program to fruition. So with that, I will hand it over to Debbie.
Great, thank you.
Well, good morning,
Good morning.
and thank you for inviting me here this morning to share with you some of the successes that we've had with the agricultural marketing program. So, after spending a lot of time laying the foundation, really building up the messaging platform and the look and feel of the brand, our primary focus now is on PR and social media. Now, the goals with that are to build awareness, interest, and action among our target audience. So let's just take a quick look at who it is we're targeting. So our primary focus is really the more populated areas of Placer County. So we're looking at Roseville, Rockland, Lincoln, Granite Bay. We've got this wonderfully engaged community, Auburn, Loomis, Newcastle, but what we want to do is make sure more of those people in those more populated areas really understand the amazing agricultural bounty that is right in their backyard. So how do we reach this audience, and how do we reach the 21st century consumer? If you look at, and whether you're targeting right here in Placer County or across the United States, consumer behavior is changing. So if you look at this infographic, the average consumer today is spending 9 hours in front of some sort of digital screen. So whether it is a smartphone, a tablet, a computer, a television screen, that's where people are, and we want to be where our audience is. So a statistic that recently came out, U.S. adults now spend more time on digital devices than watch television. That is a huge shift in consumer behavior. Facebook now has more than a billion active users. Twitter has more than 300 million users. And just on January 1st, there was an article on the front page of the Sacramento Bee, and they quoted, "Twitter has become what cable news television was 20 years ago." And that's exactly how we use Twitter for Placer Grown. It is our own customized news feed. So with regard to social media, if you'll first take a look at actually the bottom chart, in 2013, as we were really ramping up our social media efforts, we had 173% growth on Facebook. Twitter, 53% growth. And then if you look at the top portion, in 2014, we had 50% growth and 18% growth on Twitter. So there's a wonderfully engaged community that we are communicating with every single day in the social space. Now, I know these numbers are kind of tough. What do they mean? Are they good? Are they bad? So what we try to do is provide some context to these numbers with some comparisons. So if you look at the first column, that's Placer Grown. We have almost 10,000 likes on Facebook. The next one is Yuba Sutter Grown, 531 likes. Solano Grown has 338, Nevada County 58, and then the California Alliance with Family Farms has 3,900. So now, in all fairness, I don't know what kind of marketing program they have, if they've got a budget, if they have an agency supporting their efforts, but what I can say is our numbers are really, really good. And then what we also want to do, if you look at that last column, is compare ourselves to a statewide organization, California Grown. And if you look at their numbers, we are right in line, literally 100 likes away from them, and basically the same thing on Twitter. So really great performance here. Some of the things that we're promoting is just everything agriculture in Placer County. So we do Wine Wednesdays, promoting the Placer Wine Trail. Here we have Goat House Brewing. We did a promotion with them, lots of engagement. We have a little fun with the most interesting man in the world. We also do a lot of historical posts. This is Main Street, Rockland in the early 1900s. And then we do a lot of promotions of mandarins during mandarin season. And then, of course, we've got the farmers market, posting what's in season, sharing with the community, what's opening, what's closing, etc. Twitter, once again, our news feed. We're posting live from the wine trail, different farm dinners. And in fact, we had a radio interview, so not only when we're on the radio are we hitting that audience, we're then leveraging that and bringing it to more people through our social channels. Pinterest, lots of beautiful imagery, growing that audience every day. And then we do producer profiles. And what this is really about is we realize not everybody we're targeting is going to make it out to a farm. And so what we want to do is really put a face to the family farmers right here in Placer County. So we do these profiles. So here's Nita Ranch. Here's Greco Farm. We do Farmer Fridays. So again, really telling their stories and sharing it to a wider audience. So our social media program has garnered more than 1.7 million social media impressions. We use a third-party analytics tool to capture this information, and it's actually low because it only tracks Facebook and Twitter, and we're obviously on more social platforms than just that. From a public relations perspective, we create these amazing gift baskets, and we actually hand deliver them to the media with press releases and media alerts with wine and the bounty right here from Placer County. And what that results in is phenomenal media coverage. So here's Courtney and Carol, who got up very early, 5 a.m., for these segments. But here we are on Fox 40. And here's Tina Wilkins with Vina Castellano with Kitty O'Neill. So we've been on KFBK numerous times throughout the year. And that's one of the reasons why our focus is on social media and PR, because you know, with advertising, if you spend X, you get X. With PR, we're able to pitch all year long, supporting all the different events and the farmers markets, and garner coverage all year long. So your return on investment is much more sound. Here we have Dave from Pescatori and Carol Arnold, Placer Grown, Karen Sinclair, Sinclair Family Farm. This was a 3 or 4 minute segment on Capital Public Radio, all promoting Celebrate Placer Grown Week. Again, with an ad budget, we couldn't afford it. With PR and social, we use it and we leverage it. Lots of coverage. We could go on and on, but here's just a quick snapshot. We also want to make sure that we are inviting the media into Placer County to enjoy and to experience it firsthand. So here's a media blogger lunch at Wise Villa Winery. We actually had the new editor-in-chief of Comstock's magazine join us. And then, of course, you have out on a Saturday, Josh and Carol there supporting the efforts and telling the Placer Grown story. Celebrate Placer Grown Week. We're out there tweeting live, promoting it via PR prior to and then posting Facebook albums after the fact. The Crop to Tabletop dinner, we got an email or a phone call a couple days before it. It wasn't sold out, so we went to our social network, promoted it, and 2 days later, it was sold out. So you can see how all of these things are pretty powerful when working together. Holiday in the Hills, we were on the wine trail, tweeting live. Of course, again, sending out news releases prior to it and posting albums after. So you can see Stephanie Perry there at Fawn Ridge, Pamela Dobson from Pazza, and Kevin Stevenson from Cass, and our social media specialist there, Beth. So from a public relations perspective, we're looking at more than 123 million total impressions. It's a standard measurement in our business. That's how we sort of keep track of our success, and it's basically a goal to improve upon as well. And then marketing materials, we do a lot of different creative promoting 4th of July, a lot of promotions. Mandarin Monday is one of our best performing posts. During mandarin season, we give away a 10-pound bag of mandarins. So again, telling the story and sharing the bounty. We customize the social network headers with everything that's in season. We also do offline. So we do printed material to support all the things we're doing online. Of course, we have our Taste Bud t-shirts. I think most of you have those, but we use those for promotions and giveaways. And then we do some traditional advertising. This is a full-page ad in the visitor's guide. We also accompany that with the farm guide listing all of the producers in Placer County. And then we have the website, so you can see that from a look and feels perspective, we are sort of utilizing this brand and threading it through all of the marketing materials. And the website features everybody. So when we have a small farmer who doesn't have a website of their own, this is where people can go to find them and track them down. And then Visit Placer is where we get most of our traffic from. And then Facebook is third and fourth in line with driving traffic, so you can see how powerful those tools are. And then, really what we want to promote is this umbrella effect with Placer Grown. And so SAC Mag, they have an Eat and Drink newsletter. It was distributed to 20,000 of their subscribers. And basically it highlights that Placer Grown is part of the Farm to Fork movement in the Sacramento region, as well as the go-to source for all agriculture in Placer County. I mean, that is what our goal is, and we couldn't have articulated it better ourselves. So our message is definitely getting out there. And so this is what the program is all about. We are that umbrella effect for all things agriculture in Placer County. So really there to support and drive traffic to the hundreds of farms and farmers, mandarin growers, the farmers markets, the producers, the events, etc. So hopefully you guys are all connected with us. And if you aren't, this is where you can connect. You have any questions?
Questions by board members? Supervisor Montgomery?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the presentation, but I'm going to complain because I never win on Mandarin Mondays, and I always submit an answer. So obviously the deck is stacked against us.
Employees and their family members of this station.
Yeah, I was pretty sure you screened me out. But I think your presence on Facebook, I don't do Pinterest or Twitter, but your presence on Facebook has been really robust. And I've had people come up to me in events throughout the county and comment on it all the way up to Lake Tahoe. So want to thank you for your efforts on that. And just really think there's some great opportunities in front of us to keep growing. So
absolutely,
let's focus on it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Supervisor Holmes?
I, too, want to thank you for the hard work you put into this, and you, too, Josh, for promoting agriculture in Placer County. As you know, I'm a big supporter of agriculture, and whatever we can do to keep it going and grow it, sorry for the pun, I encourage. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Any member of the public wish to address the board on this item? Okay, seeing none, thank you both very much for the presentation. And we will now take up our 10:30 timed item. This is a Community Development Resource Agency item with appropriate support from County Counsel's Office. And leading the conversation this morning will be Michael Johnson. This, of course, is the consideration of the issuing a temporary conditional use permit for the Placer County Government Center Temporary Emergency Shelter. Mr. Johnson, good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michael Johnson with the Community Development Resource Agency. With me this morning is Jerry Haas with the Planning Services Division. Jerry was instrumental in preparing a lot of the background data that's included in this staff report this morning. As the board is aware, the county has received a proposal from Right Hand America seeking assistance for the establishment...
Right Hand Auburn.
Right Hand Auburn. And Volunteers of America. Yeah. Mixing the message here. I will work on that. Thank you. The county has received a proposal from Right Hand Auburn seeking assistance for the establishment of a temporary emergency shelter here within the Placer County Government Center located up in the North Auburn area. The Right-Hand Auburn has identified a need to house homeless people during the winter months, and their proposal is designed to address that need. As set forth in the Right-Hand Auburn proposal, the group proposes a collaborative effort between the county and private businesses as well as the faith-based community. The intent is for the county to provide a facility, a location for the establishment of a temporary emergency shelter, and Right-Hand Auburn would provide the funding and financing necessary to accommodate the facility. As proposed, the shelter would be open from 8 o'clock p.m. to 6 o'clock a.m. every day, and due to the temporary nature, meals that may be provided would be prepared off-site and brought into the facility. Volunteers of America would be identified as the operator of the facility. Volunteers of America would have a minimum of 2 trained professional staff available to accept people into the facility and to monitor the actions therein. Volunteers of America would also be responsible for operating and enforcing any rules and regulations. One of the primary ones would be no smoking within the buildings. As proposed, the shelter would provide 2 meals. As I said, they would be brought in from off-site locations. There would be group sleeping quarters for both men and women, which would be separated, as well as shower and restroom facilities. In addition, the operator also proposes to provide referrals to existing and county-based services. As this board is aware, this issue was discussed at length at your January 22nd meeting. At that meeting, staff provided analysis of various buildings within the Placer County Government Center where a proposed emergency shelter could be located. Based upon staff's analysis, it was concluded that buildings 303A and B, it's highlighted here in yellow, it doesn't show up very well, but right there, was the best and most favorable location for the establishment of a temporary shelter. This site was previously utilized as a jail facility, and those facilities have since been moved down to the Santucci Justice Center. This building had the fewest number of impediments to allow for a quicker transition of an emergency shelter into the building. After receiving staff's presentation and comments from the public, your board directed staff to move forward with the preparation of a temporary conditional use permit for the establishment of an emergency shelter to be located within buildings 303A and B within the government center. Also, as part of your action, the board decided to require that this action be brought back before your board as opposed to deferring the action to the Planning Commission for consideration. Staff has prepared a temporary conditional use permit as was directed by your board. There are conditions of approval in there that address the issues that have been identified by staff. There's also a separate site access agreement presentation that will follow that goes into more detail as to the requirements associated with the establishment of this facility. The county's housing element has numerous goals and policies related to addressing homeless issues here in the county. Going forward with this emergency shelter would further the county's process of addressing those homeless issues here. The property currently, as with most of the property in the government center, is zoned C3DC, which is our heavy commercial design overlay district. Emergency shelters are not a permitted or conditionally permitted use within the C3 zoning district. However, Section 17.56.300, temporary uses and events, which is in the Placer County Code, allows for the establishment of a temporary use for up to a 1-year period. And it is on that basis that staff brings forward this temporary conditional use permit for your consideration. While these buildings have been used as housing in the past for inmates, as I said, the buildings are the best able to accommodate a quick transition into an emergency shelter. Over the past few years, the homeless population in North Auburn has started to congregate within the Placer County Government Center, and the establishment of a temporary shelter will give those persons a place to go during the cold winter nights. Buildings 303A and B, as you can see, are located internal to the campus, and staff has concluded that there will be minimal impacts to persons or properties around the area if this site were to be located, or if this facility were to be located in this location. As discussed in your staff report, this is a temporary use for up to 90 days, and staff would intend to work with the project applicant to look for other opportunities that may exist beyond that 90-day period. Staff recommends that the board take action to approve the temporary conditional use permit as presented in your packet. Staff is available for any questions the board may have.
Okay. We are considering the issuance of a conditional use permit for a temporary facility, a 90-day permit here at the DeWitt Government Center. The questions by board members. Supervisor Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You've identified that the property in question is not zoned for this type of use at this time.
Correct.
And we're going, since it's a difference in land use, isn't the normal procedure to go to the, wouldn't that go to the Municipal Advisory Council in the area affected and then on to the Planning Commission, just to ensure that there was enough public outreach for this change in land use?
That would be the typical process that is followed. Because of the concern that this be moved forward as quickly as possible, the board directed that this come back at this February 3rd meeting, as opposed to going back to the MAC and the Planning Commission, which would be our standard process.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify in the record, the staff request is for a permit, a temporary conditional use permit for 1 year, and the 90-day operation spills into our B item on the site access agreement. We felt that issuance of a 1-year permit would give the county the maximum flexibility, and the county is the property owner. So rather than issue the permit to Right Hand or to Volunteers for America, it would be issued to the Director of Facility Services as the owner of the building.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. All right, Supervisor Montgomery.
Michael, thank you. I'm looking at that picture and thinking it's probably a little bit old, because I see a lot of buildings that I think have been demolished since that photo was taken. Can you, just to help us orient ourselves as to where the actual project location is, can you, with the pointer, show us where the CDRC building is?
The Community Development Resource Building is located here at the southeast corner of Bell Road and Richardson.
Okay, and the FAB building?
The Finance Administration Building, is located right in this location here.
And where is the Sheriff's Department and jail?
The Sheriff's facility is located here, and the jail located just to the west.
No, south.
Yeah, south.
Oh,
That's
south,
juvenile
I'm sorry.
detention.
Yeah.
No, a little further.
Okay.
That's right there.
Down below the C1.
Yeah.
That down.
Yeah, down there. Okay. All right, thank you. I just wanted to make sure people understood where that's proposed to go. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Holmes, would you like to still on any other? Okay, seeing no other questions or comments by board members at this time, this is a public hearing. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Members of the public that wish to address the board on this item, we ask that as you step forward, you identify yourself for the record and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes. Was there additional staff presentation? No? We're all done with, okay, thank you. So, any members of the public wish to address the board on this item?
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Bridget Barnes. I live at 2320 Bean Road, Auburn, California. My offices are in Penryn. I'm here on behalf of Right Hand Auburn, and I imagine there will be further questions. There were just a couple of points of clarification to some of the things that Mike said. We, first of all, want to thank the board for expediting this and going outside of the normal procedures and considering this. You've all heard from us about the urgent nature. One of the things that has become obvious over the last week in terms of the issues that are in the site access agreement is that, and I wanted to mention this right now before you take public comment, is that one of the things that is different than was said is that the site access agreement is assuming that we would access the location at 4 o'clock and have it open by 6 in the evening, but it would be open and close at 8. We are expanding the agreement with Volunteers of America to provide this additional time for several reasons, but not least of which that in bad weather, the homeless would be able to get in sooner, and the food would be available at an earlier time. They would not be congregating throughout the campus. But this will be addressed a little bit later. There are various issues in the site agreement that are going back and forth with county council and staff who have worked very hard, especially since last Friday when the first draft of the agreement was available to start work on. So I just wanted to mention that so you knew that when you're considering these things, and then I'll come back up and point out the others in a little bit. Thank you very much.
Okay, so clarifying that, there was, I'm looking at the conditions of approval for the temporary conditional. I don't see, I recall reading in the staff report, hours. Am I seeing in the specific conditions the hours? Because Ms. Barnes referenced the site access agreement and the adjustment to the hours for access, where...
That's in the next item.
Okay, so there's nothing, though, that speaks to the hours in the conditional use permit. I see dates listed in here, and I see that it says 7 days a week with specific limited daily hours of operation. Okay, as specified in the site act. So we're not, in this particular action of our board, we would not need to make any kind of modification to what is being presented or has been presented by staff on the 16 conditions listed on the conditional use permit. Correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
It was more.
I just wanted to make that clear so that everybody knew what the hours were, because Mike had mentioned the hours.
All right.
And I'd like to reserve other comments for later, because let me just state, Right Hand Auburn's, besides thanking you for this opportunity, asks you to approve the use permit and asks that we be allowed to come back to you when staff and I have worked out all the details of the site access agreement, which county council can address when he's ready.
Okay. When we get to the site access agreement item, we'll have that conversation.
Thank you.
Yes, Supervisor Holmes? Oh, yeah.
I was just going to clarify, Chairman Euler, the temporary conditional use permit is designed to prohibit 24-hour occupancy. As you pointed out in Condition 5 on page 16, the site access agreement will address the specific hours of operation. And I think Ms. Barnes has outlined those, and Mary can speak to that.
Right. Well, Condition 5 does say that it may operate 7 days a week, but it says with specific limited daily hours as specified in the site access.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Condition 9, I think, is the prohibition on 24 hours.
Okay. Yeah, all right. Thank you. Okay. Others that might, just go ahead and step on up, form a line if you want, whatever's most expeditious here.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. My name is Barbara Sloan. I live on Forest Hill Avenue in Auburn, and I have been an Auburn resident for 39 years now. Raised my children here, worked 20 years in local government, have my grandchildren here with me many days during the week. And I have a strong opinion to express today, and I'm sure it will be contrary to many of the opinions I've been reading in the newspaper lately. But I urge you not to allow either a temporary or temporary to permanent homeless shelter to be built in the Auburn area. I believe this type of shelter will primarily house people with drug and alcohol addictions, and that they will come from far and near to avail themselves of this free service. Homeless people without such addictions can already find shelter with the Gathering Inn and with other social programs that are supported by the people of Placer County. The addicted homeless population, however, is often linked to a criminal element of burglary and vandalism, which is necessary to support their addiction. And the people and businesses of Auburn should not have to suffer the repercussions from this. I speak from experience. A small cottage which my husband built for me in the Sierras has been burgled and vandalized repeatedly over the last 2.5 years. The homeless, drug-addicted woman who initially squatted there brought in a group of hardcore druggies who were known in the area, but apparently they were beyond the reach of law enforcement, who did their best to assist me, by the way. Law enforcement was great. However, these people repeatedly vandalized and burgled my little place, despite my efforts to secure it. They tore fixtures off the wall, broke my PG&E meter in order to steal electricity, and stole everything, including my new Yodel wood stove. 2.5 years after the initial break-in, the woman who was the leading cause of this group is still awaiting trial. She's being housed now in a state hospital at taxpayer expense, but the other thugs are still at large. My mountain retreat is unsafe, and I have been robbed of its enjoyment, as well as over $5,000 worth of property there. The repeated nature of these thefts makes it impossible to claim reimbursement through my homeowner's insurance policy, because each separate event requires the payment of a new deductible. Is this the type of activity that other Auburn residents should and will be subjected to if a temporary to permanent shelter is built in our area? To those who speak of compassion, I ask them to seek that warm and fuzzy feeling in a different way. Invite some of the addicted homeless people into your own homes for a meal, a bathroom break, and a warm bed. But do not push this task off onto the residents and businesses of Auburn. I thank you for your consideration, and I welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wow. My name is Jerry Mifsud. I'm a member of the Auburn Homeless Forum. Also, I have a television show and I write in a free newspaper. I can't believe what I just heard, but we're all entitled to our free speech. There's no thugs. There's ignorance and there's insensitivity. This 10-year plan that we had for homelessness for Auburn has long expired. The trail that's taken place to get us to this point has been long, and we're nowhere closer, but we are right now. We're very close. The city council kicked the can down the road, called the people by the Fox statues who were against a shelter being zoned there, called them fearmongers. Mike Holmes was the only right guy by saying they delayed and kicked the can down the road, and now we have it here. The commissioners overlooking the city planners voted 5-0 not to put a shelter in a zone in that area. They recommended that it go where it's now being proposed, in the county. This offer was made a long time ago. I don't want to drag the past because we're close to a possible future here. The encampments are starting to build up again. Homeless people are starting to come back into town again, and they need some direction. The strong sentiments that were expressed by Supervisor Montgomery and Supervisor Duran have led the way, I think, to a broader thinking by the supervisors here. I'm glad to see as of late, Jim, that you've visited Seventh-day Adventists and also Father Mike at St. Teresa's. I'm proud of you for that. Be it late or whatever, that's not the point. The point is that we're close. We're closer than ever now with a union here of the supervisors. ARD has shut down its proposal by Scott Holbrook for aggressive solicitation, 4-1. And he's a liability. For him to be used in any reference here is not good. I don't think it was smart to have heard his sentiments, because he demonizes homeless people, and that's not what we want to do. Right hand government is the only stumbling block because the community is prepared to come forth, like Right Hand is, to facilitate everything. They have donations, they have volunteers, Volunteers of America, all ready to come forth. The only thing holding us up is government, be it county or city. It's in your hands for us to move forward with this. I want to thank Father Mike, Pastor Dan, Bridget Barnes, Gary Mampa, and hopefully we'll get that much closer to a temporary homeless shelter. Hopefully that temporary shelter can lead maybe someday to a permanent one. This town has dragged its feet too long. It's time that we took some action, and I want to thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Kathleen Byers. I've lived here in Auburn for over 50 years. I'm a homeowner. I live within 1 mile of the proposed temporary homeless shelter. I understand and appreciate the compassion that the church has for the homeless in our area. However, I do not believe a homeless shelter is the answer. Yes, I know there are homeless in Auburn, but you are inviting them all to congregate in one area. I envision county workers having to walk through a gauntlet of panhandlers going to and from their vehicles. Groups of panhandlers on the corners nearby as parents drop their children off at school. Strangers invited to the area walking up and down our streets on a regular basis, learning our daily routines. I have had homeless walk through my yard. Autos have been rummaged through in our neighborhood. This is not what the working residents of Auburn should endure. Please don't invite more problems. I ask you to not make these people comfortable while suppressing our way of life here in Auburn. Hard times can and do fall on anyone. There are people that appreciate a helping hand, a hand up. With county assistance, they can better themselves, but many have chosen this way of life. They don't want bills or responsibility. A homeless shelter doesn't fix the problem. It just moves it out of sight for many and shoved into the faces of others. If this homeless shelter is shoved on us, like so many decisions are, I ask that each person walking through the door be photographed, fingerprinted, and given a breathalyzer. You shouldn't be asking the county to make wanted criminals or intoxicated people comfortable. After finding out who they are and where they come from, hand them a bus ticket to their hometown. Let their hometown support their homeless. If you are from Auburn and with no family, give them assistance to get housing, food, and a job. Please don't agree with this.
Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Cherie Holm, and I am a recovering addict. I arrived in Auburn on December 6, 1993, as a homeless person. I chose to be homeless because of the shame and guilt of being an addict and also being mentally ill. I chose to walk away from family and friends, and I had no place to go. I got the assistance of the Salvation Army to assist me in getting into a facility that was on Forest Hill Avenue in Auburn. It was called MoCare. It was for years a very successful recovery house for addicts. It was run by people that had been clean and sober for many years. The attitudes of people in the neighborhood and in the city of Auburn closed that facility down. Placer County, South Placer, no longer exists. The thing that we keep avoiding is there is not a place for addicts to go for recovery in the Auburn area other than Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. And to walk through those doors sometimes is very frightening. We have people that are self-medicating. They are not thugs. They are people that are broken, that have been abused. I stand up here before you and tell you that as a practicing alcoholic drug addict for 30 years, I never vandalized, I never stole. Most of my partiers, we lived in homes, we owned cars, and I can tell you right now in North Auburn, especially out at the Greens. There's somebody cooking crank right now. It's all over our community. There are kids that are going to school at Placer High that are high on drugs. And to continually blame the homeless as criminals and losers and thugs, and that they are all responsible for all the crime in Placer County, I say that is wrong. There are a lot of lost souls out there. They need mental help. The root of alcoholism and drug addiction is mental illness, bottom line. And I thank you for considering what we're considering today, but I really need to speak up about people that chase recovery homes out of areas. We no longer have any place to go. They don't have any place to go where they can, for 90 days, get day in and day out help to get clean and sober. Those facilities don't exist anymore. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Just for the record, South Placer was, the South Placer Recovery Center on Richardson Drive was absorbed by CORE, which is Community Recovery Resources, and it's now on Shale Ridge Drive and on Loxley Lane. And so those services are provided. They also have a facility in Grass Valley, Nevada City area for those types of programs. So there are programs in the Auburn area for that type of recovery.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Ridge, and my husband and I have lived at Atwood Road, 11480 Atwood Road, for 42 years. I was born and raised here in Auburn. We have had the homeless on the other side of our property every Sunday for the free burritos. It had to stop because of all the fighting, all the swearing, all the smoking. I'm not here to demonize the homeless. I feel for them, but we've had a break-in. We've lived there for 42 years, like I said. We've now had a break-in in our home. My daughter walked in on a homeless person in our kitchen. We have called the police several times. The sheriff's office comes immediately, takes care of us, but it's very scary. We don't even feel safe now in our own home. My question is, who is going to monitor these people at this site? If the police can't do it, how are they going to do it? How's the faith base going to do it? What about my family? What about my neighbors? Why don't we have a say? Who's monitoring? Who's going to be the one to say, no, I'm sorry, you cannot come in because you've been drinking?
We'll
What about the children in these homes?
We'll address those points in our comments or questions to staff, okay? We'll make sure that gets addressed.
Addressed, and then what?
We'll have answers to those questions in terms of the monitoring and all the rest, and that has to do with the site access agreement item that we'll be taking up after.
And when does that happen? Right after this
Right after
meeting?
right after we take action on this item. If the board were to approve the conditional use permit, the very next item on our agenda is the site access agreement with the operator. So in terms of the monitoring and those questions, that's when those questions would be appropriate. Okay, thank you. Anybody else on the conditional use permit wish to address the board? Sir, are you rising in order to come up and speak, or no? Okay. Anybody else? Okay, yes, sir.
Morning. My name is Jerry Elmer. I live at the McCauley Meadows, 585 Sacramento Street. I've lived here for since November 5th, when I moved here from the Bay Area, where I was homeless for 11 years. I've been in just about every homeless shelter in the South Bay Area, where they have, Santa Clara County has about 7,000 homeless people, and there are 700 to 900 of them in Gilroy. I was, before that, Spent 40 years working in the electronics business. I was a design engineer. I lost my job, and because of the fact I was over 50, the Silicon Valley doesn't want me anymore, and so I was out on the street for 11 years. I spent 7 winters sleeping on the floor in the Armory, the National Guard Armory in Gilroy. And I've been listening to all of these issues here, and I can tell you that somewhere in the middle is where the reality is. The problems you have in the shelters, not only is just you got to not have smoking, you can't allow people to bring liquor in, you can't allow them to have any drugs in there, and you can't allow any weapons. And you have to screen them before they come in. And once you do that, then you have to have a place for them to go outside to smoke where they can't go out and pick up the stuff that they weren't allowed to bring in and bring it back in. So once they go out, you say, if you go out that door, you can't come back in again. And if you don't do that, then you're going to have problems. The problems with people being drunk going in there, as long as they're quiet, they always got go lay down and go to sleep. If they made trouble, they got thrown out. Every once in a while, we had to have police. 2 people is not enough. If you've got what the paper said, 30 or 40, you need 5 people at least in there to just keep an eye on things. 2 people's not enough. I heard in all of my tenure, I heard these same arguments. Oh, they'll come from far and wide. It's not true. The Gilroy Armory is a 3-hour bus ride from Palo Alto, and most of the homeless people wouldn't do it just because they didn't want to sit on the bus that long. I went down there because it was safe. There was another armory in Sunnyvale, and they had so many problems and so many fights, I was scared to go there, and I just wouldn't go in the place. If you went down to the one in Gilroy, the people down there treated the homeless people totally differently. They treated them with respect, and they had practically no problems there at all. Every once in a while, you have a flare-up, but you have that at the grocery store. So it's a good part of the problem is how people are treated to begin with. So anyway, that's my input for you.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate that. Thank you for that perspective. Anybody else wish to address the board on this item? Okay, seeing none, we close the public hearing. We bring it back to the board for consideration. Action before us is whether or not to issue a conditional use permit for the housing of a temporary emergency homeless shelter at our county government center. I have several questions of staff, but I'll defer to any members of the board that have any questions at this point. Okay, so my questions, and perhaps I'm not sure which of these is most appropriately discussed under the item of the access agreement versus the conditional use permit. But we have, as the last gentleman just referenced, we've heard both sides of the homeless magnet issue. If you have a shelter of this kind, are you meeting the need of your indigenous homeless population? Are you creating a magnet that draws people from other communities to this population and thereby perhaps exacerbating the problem as it exists today in the neighboring area with the homeless folks that would not be in the shelter during the night, but during the daytime, where do they go? And so, again, I'll look to staff for your thoughts as to whether those items around doing some kind of an inventory. How do we understand who's at the shelter? Who is seeking these services? What is their background, if they have one, with our boys in the back row? And what does that mean in terms of the safe operation of the shelter for the folks that are using the service as well as the folks that are providing the service? What do we do if we find somebody trying to gain entry who has a history of violence, criminal convictions associated with violence, with assault? How do we treat that person? Do we allow access to those people? When we get to the issue, as was addressed in the last board meeting about sexual assault, sexual predator-related crimes, what is our plan for dealing with those folks as we find them, as we identify them? And so it's an issue of knowing who's using the facility, who's taking advantage of the services being provided when we start, and then over time, and seeing if, because again, as I had expressed earlier, I'm only interested in providing the service if the service actually serves as the front door to a pathway to a different way of life for people. I'm not interested in providing a service that perpetuates the current way of life. And yes, there are people who, through no fault of their own, find themselves in a difficult situation. There are other people who choose poorly, and as a result of that, find themselves in these situations. I want to reward people who want to make those life choices to end whatever circumstance might find them at our front door. And so I want to know, how are we identifying those people, and how are we tracking those people, and how are we seeing whether or not we are progressing along any kind of a path toward some life other than dependence on a facility like this. So all the issues around, is it a magnet? Is it drawing in other people? Are we actually seeing an end to the cycle because we provided a temporary shelter, and by virtue of that temporary shelter, introduced people into the services that the county currently provides, that we heard at our last hearing from Graham and others about what we are providing. My second concern is the concerns raised about the neighborhood. We're being asked to issue a conditional use permit. One of the questions most frequently asked is, if somebody violates the conditions, then what? I believe that no matter where a facility like this is located, there absolutely will be impacts, absolutely, on the surrounding neighborhoods. And I want to know that those people in the surrounding neighborhoods, from the folks who live across the street to the folks who work right down the street in our government center, I want to know that they have a voice in this process to say, because of the operation of this facility at this location, all of a sudden, here are the issues that we're dealing with. Here are problems that have come up. And that they have recourse, that they have, just as if we were issuing a conditional use permit for a bar in an area where we wouldn't normally operate a bar, and we assure the neighbors, don't worry, if it gets too rowdy, we'll revoke that conditional use permit. Neighbors have that right to appeal and have us withdraw that conditional use permit if the bar isn't being operated the way that the owner-operator said the bar was going to be operated. And so I want the neighbors that live there, the neighbors that work there, to have a voice, whether it is an official committee that is made up of, that works with the operator of the facility as an avenue for complaints or concerns, to obviously first try to reconcile with the operator of the facility what the issue may be. But if problems persist, problems arise and increase, or problems persist, I want that committee to have access back to this board, be able to say, this is what we've been dealing with ever since this opened. And if we can't functionally manage those problems away, we as a board have an obligation to review whether our issuance of a conditional use permit was the right decision. And then third, and as importantly for everybody, we're being asked today to do something for a facility that we own, that we most likely would not be sitting here with a staff recommendation if it were a private business owner coming in to say, I know what ADA says, I know what other, but let's just for now, let's just not worry about that stuff. Let's not consider this a change of use. I believe we're skirting the edge on a lot of what we're being asked to do in order to make this facility ready in a timely fashion. And that creates legal liabilities for us. And whether the legal liabilities are in the normal operation of the facility and what might happen with interactions between folks using the facility or folks using the facility and others, neighbors, or just what happens in the normal course of the night as somebody gets up to use the restroom. We are, I believe, by inviting this use into this facility, we are creating a significant liability for ourselves, for the county. And that's for all 360,000 county residents, not just the 40 folks that we're talking about here, 40 or so folks that we're trying to address here. And we as a board have a fiduciary obligation to all the residents of this county to make sure that we use those dollars wisely and don't put ourselves in these kinds of positions without good reason and without good protections. And so the issue of indemnification and all the liability issues associated with this use, absent the kinds of improvements that we heard last time, the sprinklers, the additional access issues regarding bathrooms and all the rest, those are all going to be very important to me as we move this forward, making sure that we have full indemnification of the county from these things. Now, I know that, anything that happens, we're going to get named, but we can do the best that we can to make sure that we're properly protected. So I've raised the issue of magnet/inventory and what is the operational protocol to make sure that we're not just seeing a ballooning of a population, but rather a matriculation of this population into normal society, if you can call it that. A neighborhood/community review panel that has access to the operator and to the Board of Supervisors, as well as the indemnification. And I guess I will start with probably Mary as the facilities person on these kinds of things. How can you help me address my concerns as it relates to these?
Supervisor Euler, the component...
Can you speak up a little, Mary, or maybe our tech folks can turn up your mic a little or something.
Supervisor Euler, the component of this public process that we've yet to come to is the discussion of the site access agreement that will follow this discussion. And some of the items that you've identified would be included in that document. Your questions regarding who is seeking the services and who would be there and how it might be tracked over time. There is a provision in the site access agreement that there be reporting requirements that I think would get at those demographics, but I would say that there isn't anything in that condition at this particular moment in time that would preclude outside citizens that would come from Sacramento County or other Nevada County. So that part of it is not addressed in the agreement right at this particular time, but tracking of the demographics is part of it. I think that with regard to screening for individuals with backgrounds in violence or sexual assault, etc., those are issues that would fall to the Volunteers of America who would be operating the program. The information that we have had is that there would be some limited amounts of screening, but perhaps they could speak to exactly what their internal processes are to identify specifically the level and extent to which they screen for those individuals. We can also based on your direction, add requirements that would impose requirements that go beyond the requirements of state law and the penal code, which are included in the provisions. We certainly could include a provision, or it could be part of the use permit, either one, with regard to a community committee that would participate in the providing input to us with regard to any ancillary impacts that might occur. With regard to the facilities, our site access agreement does require and does recommend to you that there are improvements to the facility. They are based on a 90-day occupancy, not a longer occupancy than that, and there are certainly provisions for indemnification and insurance requirements that would accrue both to Right Hand Auburn and Volunteers of America.
Okay, thank you. And Jerry, did you have something you wanted to?
Oh, those control issues are part of the reason that the staff is approached with a one-year conditional use permit held by the county, because as the county, as the holder, the county could surrender it. And built into the one-year temporary use is a 90-day pilot program, so that we could begin to collect some of the data that you were talking about in your questions. And much of the legal protections are going to be in that site access agreement, and I think that's one of the reasons why we don't have one today, is because we're not waiving any requirements. We're requiring that the code be met for the change in use, and we've looked at a lot of different options for compliance, and that's what we will continue to work on with Right Hand Auburn.
Okay. So a number of the questions that I raised were raised because the process that we're in requires us to consider taking this step of the issuance of the conditional use permit before, obviously, the granting of the site access agreement, because without the board issuing the conditional use permit, the latter action is moot. And yet, the concerns that folks are raising here today and have raised in previous hearings are all concerns that I wanted you folks to know are heard by this board, that as you've just heard, all those items will be addressed and discussed as part of the site access agreement. My understanding is we do have the opportunity to add to the conditional use permit the convening or creation of some kind of a neighborhood committee that is the place where residents in the area and employers in the area and employees in the area might be able to bring concerns in order to work with anybody who might in the future be granted a site access agreement to try to resolve those concerns, and then absent resolution of those concerns, be able to bring those concerns directly back to the board as kind of a citizen's review of meeting the conditions of approval under our conditional use permit process. So it was important to me that you folks know that I think every member of this board shares the concerns that are raised in regard to community safety and trying to find that delicate balance of how do we meet what is unfortunately a real need among people, some portion of the population of which will absolutely seek to better themselves through a facility like this being available. Some portion of the population will perpetuate in that lifestyle. That's just the way it will be. And hopefully our operators will be diligent. Should we approve an operation agreement, our operators will be diligent in identifying who is whom and working with those who are seeking to improve themselves and not necessarily encouraging those that are looking to simply perpetuate the lifestyle. So, Supervisor Wygant, you had your on briefly there.
Yeah, probably got a lot of that covered. So I have a question, I guess a statement for staff. I would want an answer from our staff on this question, initially at least. But I think the kinds of comments you made, Kirk, are addressing my words would be potential change as a result of approving this conditional use permit and potential access agreement. So question I have is, if we were to do this, hopefully that change would be for better, but that's going to be measured by different people differently, and it's never black and white and clear, and it's different depending on our perspective. And I've had conversations with staff at some level, but I get, my interest in this would be as a pilot project. Made those comments last time we met, that working together maybe we could do something better and maybe something quite unique. But I guess I want to have some feedback potentially as do we feel we have a good enough inventory, if you will, assessment of current conditions to be able to assess that change. I mean, I've driven out there, I've taken the time to go by, I've seen homeless people out there, not on a regular basis, and I know we're in this business to a large extent. Some of these people are our clients. So I guess, and I know we're also doing an assessment for a longer term solution. But if there is somebody from staff who might address that issue, if we do this and we come back 90 days later, taking into consideration that we're also concurrently looking at a longer-term strategic effort to best try to deal with this question, do you feel like we have a comfort level for the benchmarks and the items that we would want to be knowledgeable about today, so that 90 days from now we can measure those? And because I'm anticipating that there will be a difference of agreement and the perception of what's currently the condition today as compared to what happens 90 days from now.
Good morning, Chair Euler, members of the board, Jeff Brown, your Health and Human Services Director. I think there's a number of indicators, Supervisor Wygant, that we could look at. We could certainly, it's visually just looking at the area where people have previously been camping. We can see the impact on that area. We can also, in cooperation with the operator, we can look at the number of individuals that are accessing shelter on any given night. We could look at any type of disturbance data, calls to the sheriff, and see, are we seeing an increase in the area, a decrease, or something very similar? And then we can also track utilization of referrals to county services. So whether that's mental health, drug and alcohol, or employment services, we can certainly collect data and try to compare that at the end of a 90-day period.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions by board members? Any other comments by staff at this point? All right, the question before our board is the consideration of the issuance of a conditional use permit subject to conditions as laid out in our board packet on page 16 and 17, attachment B. The one modification that I would request that we consider making, condition number 10 says illegal drugs, alcohol, and firearms are prohibited within the facility. I would hope that we would modify that to say weapons of any variety as opposed to just firearms. Might make a little bit of sense. And obviously that's going to be somewhat subject to the interpretation of the operator as to what constitutes a weapon, but I'll leave it to their discretion should we choose an operator in the future or have the access agreement in the future. So I can't imagine there's any objection by staff to making that modification to include weapons of any variety. Supervisor Holmes?
I just wanted to make a couple comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate your comments, and those of Supervisor Wygant. I just want to be clear that I understand that it's not a crime to be homeless, and all homeless people aren't criminals. I just want to make that clear. But I still have concerns because the number one job of a county supervisor is to ensure the health and safety of the community as a whole. And so by doing this, we're somewhat jeopardizing the health and safety of the residents and the workers and the businesses in that area. So I just want to make that clear. And if we do move forward with this, we really have to have some strict guidelines, and we also have some kind of accountability to bring back to us in case there's issues. I'm sure there'll be complaints to code enforcement if we move forward with this, but I just want to make those comments because I understand about homelessness. It's not a crime, but we have a responsibility to provide for the health and safety of all the residents of our county. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Holmes. Supervisor Montgomery?
I actually want to take the opportunity to agree with Supervisor Holmes on this, and I think that proposal in front of us to issue this temporary conditional use permit to the County of Placer rather than to an outside entity gives us that very opportunity, particularly if we move forward with the 90-day interim contract as the second part of this discussion. We've set up here many times with issues equally concerning, equally important, equally contentious, where there have been a number of really extreme and real fears that people have. And unfortunately, I think part of what we've discovered over the years is that only by trying something and implementing something can we see if those fears are real or if they are imagined. And in this case, if they're real, and we discover that there are enormous problems that arise out of this beyond what we're already seeing, because we're holding the permit, we have the opportunity to turn around and say, you know, we gave it our best shot, we tried, it didn't work. But I will also say that almost in every case that I can think of when people were very concerned and raised issues and specters of problems that were going to arise, those problems did not materialize. And so I think this is actually a great opportunity to increase public safety and to make not just North Auburn, but the county a safer place for all of us, not just the homeless people who may be using the shelter, but for all of us, residents and taxpayers in the area. So having said that, if there's no other comments from my fellow supervisors, I would move that we take the staff recommendation and approve item 5A, 1, 2, A through E. With Kirk's additional input into that.
Second.
Okay. Any additional comments by board members? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call, please.
Montgomery?
Yes.
Wygant? Yes. Holmes? Yes. Euler?
Aye. Okay, move on to item B. This is the item that would delegate the authority to the Director of Facility Services to execute a site access agreement. I think what we'll do, since we've essentially had much of the discussion regarding the issues around the site access agreement, the only thing that I would like to see, quite frankly, is rather than delegating authority to the Director of Facility Services for the execution of the site access agreement, I would like to see this item come back to the board for the board to approve what is finally negotiated as the site access agreement. I think there have been substantial enough concerns raised by members of the community and this board that it's important that this board have the final say on whether or not we're actually going to open those doors and allow for this to move forward. And so I'd entertain a motion. Well, first, any questions of board members or comments on the item? Any members of the public have any questions or comments? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Good morning, Leo McFarland, 1261 Vintage Way, Auburn. Just here to speak to the operations of a shelter operations, if indeed this is where we go from here. We welcome a community group to help provide oversight of the operations of the shelter. That's pretty standard, and where I have seen it implemented, it's implemented with great respect and with nothing but positive results as engaging everybody who has an issue or concern with the operations. Everything that's been said today rings true. We have a real concern for the health and safety of each individual that might walk in that door, so our oversight and our supervision is directed in that fashion. Weapons of any kind, the whole bit. We take this very, very serious. I've been, as I've reported before, personally I have been involved in this kind of shelter activity, management and operating for 38 years now. And this is the structure in which it has to be operated, with the safety of the neighborhoods, the input from the neighborhoods and businesses, being very responsive to the concerns and issues of all those who are affected by any activity in this sort. This has been our Volunteers America reputation in the past, and it's my reputation that's at stake if I'm involved at all in this operation. As you formulate the various standards that are necessary in any kind of operating agreement, know that we are very much engaged in assuring that data is collected, that referrals are made, that everything you would want in a successful operating venue is in place, particularly the relationship with law enforcement and working with, whether it's Health and Human Services or the General Services Department. We would engage wholeheartedly in that respect. Absent of that, perhaps if you have questions about that, I'm more than happy to speak.
No, I trust it'll all get worked out in the conversation, that when this item comes back to our board for final adoption, we'll be assured of that. So thank you.
And again, no opposition to anything that you might bring up in terms of what you need to have implemented. That's how we roll.
Thank you. Morning.
Mr. Chairman, Dan Appel, live on Gray Eagle here in Auburn. Leaders lead. For 25 or 30 years, the supervisors in this county have chosen not to lead. You deserve a tremendous amount of respect and appreciation that you were willing to put this on the table and deal with it. And particularly, Supervisor Holmes, I know you have a number of your constituents who are very prominent, who are adverse to this, and your willingness to lead, even when it's an unpopular position, deserve a lot of credit. For those that are concerned about a number of the issues of safety, I think the people at Right Hand Auburn are motivated as much or more by those concerns as anybody in the room. We've got a problem. The problem is not that we're going to create a problem with establishing a homeless shelter. The problem is we're finally addressing it. For the people in the neighborhood, somebody, after 30 years of talking, is actually saying, what can we do to begin to help the problem, to establish a place where the homeless can be congregated and offered solutions to their difficulties. For the businesses, they're no longer going to have people sleeping on their doorsteps. For the employees at the DeWitt Center, there's finally going to be somebody doing their best to make certain that there aren't homeless people congregating and addressing them with their concerns. So rather than adding to the problem, we're looking for solutions. And looking for solutions is not easy when you're a leader. There's never been a proposal for anything virtually on this earth that's ever been done that hasn't had a certain amount of opposition. Isn't that right? But at some point, you have to lead. And I want to express my appreciation for the fact that you are a group of leaders, and we appreciate all that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. He's a big man. I didn't see you standing right behind him.
got a short joke, because I'll take it. Today I'm speaking to you as Leslie Brewer. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Services for Placer Independent Resource Services. We're an independent living center that works with people with disabilities in Placer, El Dorado, and Alpine counties. I've been watching all this very closely because I wear a couple other community hats, and I just want to make sure that in the improvements, I understood last time that the ADA improvements would have to be made for the bathrooms and for accessibility, that some of the other ones might be waived under the conditional use permit, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say that all the ADA guidelines need to be met. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Euler, members of the board, Bridget Barnes again. The reason I asked to retain time was to deal with some of these intractable points. You are absolutely right that when we made our original proposal back in October, we were assuming an emergency shelter, 90 days, nights only, and asking the board for a waiver on the health and safety standards to try out the 90-day project. And it's been a moving target because different members of the board have a different concept of how this is going to be and how we were going to try and implement it. What is before the board right now in terms of the state of the access agreement is a much more complicated vehicle. And that is why when I originally stood up, I was thinking to ask you to postpone that decision. I'd like to tell you where the big changes are so that you can be considering this. The first is that although it is, the board would grant Right Hand Auburn and through us by a separate operations agreement, Volunteers of America operating responsibility, cost shifting is going to be entirely Right Hand Auburn. We have agreed to that. We have agreed to fully indemnify the county. Ms. Peterson is still working with our insurance people. We're going back and forth on drafts on that agreement. We don't have it ready yet. But it will involve including insurance to cover even the volunteers if they drive out and go pick up somebody who's not ambulatory and bring them into the center, just to give you an idea of the level of detail that's going on in the negotiations right now. On the construction, for example, the fire requirements will require, full sprinkling or an alternative. These are substantial expenditures beyond the original anticipated proposal. And for those reasons, we are trying to work out exactly how we're going to pay for all of that and pay for operations. As I mentioned, but they are included in the requirement. So what would basically be happening, as I understand my negotiations with County Council right now, is when we're done, what would occur is we will submit, and we are prepared to submit, an application for building department tomorrow for your building department's review. Assuming that they approve that, we would wait for the board's approval of the entire site access agreement in final before we pull the ticket and begin construction. Operations at the center would begin when the county issues us the occupancy permit, when you are satisfied that we have complied with these conditions. Then we have 90 days. While that's all going on, all of the things that you are asking for in terms of an in-house inventory, because Right Hand Auburn and the various churches have been sending in, have been sending in all the inventory on the homeless that they're helping presently, and that's being compared and contrasted in the Marbot study that you're going to be getting. So there will be a baseline, Supervisor Wygant, to work from. I mean, of its nature, the population we're talking about ebbs and flows, but it gives you a baseline. Let's see, what was the other thing? Oh, coming back to the construction. So it's got to be sprinklered, or we have to have employees to be in there. It's got to be done. All of the work has to be done to not just county code, but has to meet certain wage standards, all of which significantly increase our costs. As set up, it's a 90-day pilot program as requested by Supervisor Wygant. You can imagine that the extraordinary costs make it difficult to capitalize unless it is expanded in terms of time. Your use permit allows for a year, though. So there's ebb and flow that could occur over the next period of time as you consider this agreement. And so, and I also am here to answer any technical questions on the terms, but as I mentioned, Mr. Salmon has worked particularly hard, as have all of your staff. It came out on Friday. I got my basic comments back. He's got responses to me. Mr. Cardin has to review it. So there's a lot still going on the agreement today. It's not in a final state.
Right.
And I did want to let you know that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Supervisor Wygant?
Yeah, based on, Kirk, your comment about the agreement coming back to the board directly, like probably for Rob and Bridget, what's your perception as to when the earliest that could occur?
Mr. Wygant, I believe that could come back at your next board meeting, which I believe is 3 weeks from today.
That's correct.
Okay.
And that's what we're hoping for, because we do want to get it open as soon as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's it.
I see no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to address the board on this item? All right, seeing nobody leaping to their feet, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. We are being asked to consider, I guess at this point, based on my request, I guess it would simply be directing staff to continue the preparation of the site access agreement to be brought back to our board at the next board meeting, should it be deemed ready by staff at that point, for our board to adopt it, as opposed to what's listed in the staff report, which is delegating that authority to the Director of Facility Services. Supervisor Wygant, your light's still on. Did you have an additional comment?
No, just, well, yeah, one, so moved, but based on my comments last time, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Father Mike for any efforts he may have had in noting that on Friday there's a 100% forecast for rain.
That's right. That's right.
Sadly, on Donor Summit as well. But,
Yeah.
you know. I heard Supervisor Wygant make a motion, so I will second that.
Thank you.
Motion to February 24th.
No, it's not. It is a motion to direct staff to come back. It's not necessarily a
Come back
table,
with the final
because
agreement for the board.
yeah, this direction would authorize the Director of Facility Services. Supervisor Wygant's motion is essentially saying, no, we're going to bring that back to the board for the authorization. So, all right, we have a motion, Wygant, second Montgomery. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Thank you very much. All right, that concludes the regular agendized items. The Board of Supervisors, we do have a couple of remaining one remaining closed session item. So we'll go ahead and adjourn to closed session, because you already called that item out earlier on the record, unless you want to do it again.
I'll just do it again.
Okay, go ahead and do it again.
The board will adjourn to closed session to where they will convene as the Placer County In-Home Supportive Services Public Authority to deal with the labor negotiations issue.
Thank you very much.
The board has returned from closed session where meeting as the Placer County In-Home Supportive Services Public Authority heard a report from their labor negotiation team and gave direction to that team. That concludes the closed session report.